All right, here we go. It started. The offseason program. DeMeco Ryans, Will Anderson, CJ Stroud all spoke at the podium today. Very excited to listen to this. I've cut out most of the questions, although you can hear the questions now at the press conference, rendering me obsolete in many ways, except for those of you who want to come and hang out with me. But a lot of good stuff today from DeMeco, CJ, and Will Anderson. It's actually DeMeco, Will Anderson, and CJ Stroud. First comment I put in here, I cut out the first couple questions. They were boring. They were cliche. I leave all the cliche answers from Will Anderson in because Will Anderson can make a cliche answer sound like a Robert Frost poem. He's that interesting to listen to. So DeMeco was asked about the drastic formation of the front seven this offseason.
When we've added different guys to our team, of course, we had a lot of free agents last year. When you look at our team last year, there were a lot of guys who were on one-year deals or the last year of their contract here. So teams change every year. Not something you're looking to do, change your team completely every year, but the teams change, guys change, contracts are up, and we have to make certain moves. But I'm excited about the guys that we've added to our front. I feel like the front, for us, offensively and defensively, like the front is the two most important pieces to how we operate as a team. And we want to be dominant up front on the offensive line and the defensive line. And we've added guys to that defensive line. I feel like that can help us continue to be a dominant force and help our team and help our defense play great football.
And the defensive line would be a theme in a lot of the questions today. I heard that Jason Braddock was back. I could tell now that we can hear the questions. And Jason always asks really good, detailed questions, especially when it comes around draft time. But if you look at the front seven alone has 7 new players. I mean, with Fadikasi, Danico Autry, Daniil Hunter, Aziz Alshire, Tim Settle, Mario Edwards, like the 6. So like that's a lot of investment and a lot of change and shuffle. And I think some of the guys that go by the wayside, including the starting 2 defensive tackles, Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes, I wish could have been around for one more year for the turnaround, since I don't know if he would have played football unless he was able to play. He would have had opportunities elsewhere, but he just wanted to play for his hometown team. He was Daniil Hunter 1.0, the defensive lineman that came back to play in his hometown. Daniil Hunter himself is Daniil Hunter 2.0. Next question was about getting back Titus Howard and Kenyon Green.
Same lines, you all did add a lot this offseason, but how important is it for you to get the players like Titus Howard and especially a player like Kenyon Green, who missed out on the whole season, coming back?
Right. And you have guys who've missed time. When you talk about Titus, you talk about Kenyon. Those are 2 guys we feel really good about up front for us. We talk about our line being a strong suit for our team, and getting those guys back healthy will only add to our group, only add to what we're able to do up front. So I'm excited to see Titus back healthy, excited to see Kenyon, right, competing healthy, and to give himself the best shot to go out and show what he's capable of. So I don't think he's had that opportunity fully. So I'm excited to see Kenyon perform. He's been working out. He's been consistent every day. He's been putting the work in throughout the offseason. So excited for him.
Well, when I think of the different generations of guys that you just wish you could see him healthy, and when I say that, I mean like you barely see him at all until the injuries take over. Kenyon Green, we saw a fair amount his rookie year, except that once he got hurt in that Raiders game, it seemed to go all downhill for him, especially because he faced some of the best defensive tackles in the entire league back to back. I think of Benny Joppru, 2nd round pick from the 2nd year, tight end out of Michigan, who I think could have been awesome, but he just had a steady onslaught of injuries. And then I think of Lonnie Ballantyne, because remember Lonnie Ballantyne, like every single year was in camp, and then every single year would get injured, and he never played in a regular season game. And I still to this day wonder like how incredible an athlete Lonnie Ballantyne must have been. They kept him around for like 4 years without him ever playing. So hopefully Kenyon Green won't be that, because neither of those first 2 guys were drafted in the first half of the first round. Oh, good question here. One of you had asked, how much does the overhaul in personnel affect defensive scheme, if at all? I think that the scheme that DeMeco ran last year was much of what he wanted to do, except for some of the disguise and some of the complexity that he didn't start doing until the end of the season. They didn't do a really good job of really shifting the defensive backfield at the snap until towards the end of the year. Then you started to see that Browns game, especially the playoff game. It was they duped Joe Flacco hardcore by showing a front, showing a certain coverage, and then rotating at the snap. And it just completely confused Joe Flacco. They weren't doing that stuff at the beginning of the year, but that's mostly on the back end. The stuff on the front end, I think they just are trying to get amped up versions of what they already had. I think if you look at Alshire versus Blake Cashman, Alshire is more of an old school, like lunch pail, hit you in the mouth type of linebacker. Cashman is a hell of an athlete, good player. Like, I'm not hating on Cashman at all. I think that there's just more of an old school bruising mentality to Alshire. So the scheme probably won't change a lot, except in hopefully being a little bit more complex on the back end. Next question was whether their approach towards the draft changed after the offseason that they had, or because of the offseason they had.
When you look at the draft and how we approach it the same, right? We go through, evaluate all the positions, and try to have a good feel for the guys that we would like to add to our team. And like, we don't, just because we've added guys at a lot of different positions, that doesn't stop us from evaluating every position and looking at every avenue to continue to upgrade our team and continue to get our team better. So for the draft process, our process will be exactly the same. Who can we add to our team that adds value to our locker room, adds value to us on the field?
Okay, so as that question was asked and as DeMeco was answering it, I can't help but think of the fact that they already had two good young receivers, and then they went out and nabbed Stefon Diggs, which I know a lot of people wanted them to go aggressively after a wide receiver, but it is kind of stacking a strength on top of a strength. And it's not necessarily the conventional way to go about things. As we've talked about, very few teams have three really good wide receivers. It's not like a slam dunk necessity that you have to have. It does make me wonder if in the setup to the draft, when you're trying really to just fill in as many holes as you can so you don't feel like you really have to draft for need on draft day, if they might surprise us and, maybe take still an edge rusher, or take another position where they've already added on and maybe you feel like it's a position of strength as opposed to the positions of need right now. They've as much as it hurts and as much as you want a different type of defensive tackle and maybe to bolster the safeties, and certainly interior offensive line, it might end up being nothing like that. So I'm open for anything. That's the fun part. It's kind of I've talked myself into having fun with not having a first round pick. Next question was, okay. There's going to be two questions about Stefon Diggs. One here. First one was just a generic comment on the addition of Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, with Diggs, adding him is one of those guys I talked about. He's been a great player in this league for a long time, well respected. He's been a great teammate. He's been a leader, a captain. And, when you look at him and you watch the tape and you put it on, no one doubts the playmaker that he is, right? He changes games for the teams that he's been a part of, and we're anticipating the same thing for us.
Okay, so you turn on the tape, you see what you want to see. The production did drop really after it was. I believe the Broncos game was week 11, and it had started to drop right around there. So the last third of the season and on to the playoffs. I've got some more comments about it, but DJ Bieneme, I think it was DJ Bieneme, asked this question in regards to Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, again, when we watch.
Oh, okay, I laughed it off. Basically said, hey, how do you reconcile the fact that he had a drop off in production at the end of the year versus what you hope to get out of him?
Watch the tape on Stefon and the playmaker that he is, right? We always go back to the tape and we look at a player in totality. We don't look at, this amount of weeks or those weeks. We look at the entire season. We look at the guy's entire career and what he's done, how he's been productive. The guy's been an all-pro player. He's been a Pro Bowl player, over 1,000 yards for multiple seasons. So we're excited about adding Diggs to our team.
Okay. The thing about Diggs and the drop off was that, for one, that Denver game was when the offensive coordinator Dorsey gets fired, and they bring in Joe Brady, and Joe Brady was very much trying to turn, frankly, he's trying to turn Josh Allen into a quarterback that's a lot more like a CJ Stroud, a young quarterback who's willing to distribute the ball to multiple different people, not necessarily force feed it, not necessarily go out of structure before you have to go out of structure. All of those things. It's one of the hardest things about taking a young athletic quarterback like Josh Allen. It's that you've like to try to teach them to play within structure. It's difficult, like with Steve Young back in the day, they used to like tie his legs together, used to do everything they could to try to get him to play more within structure. And I think they did successfully teach Josh Allen to execute the offense, and I think a better offense than what Ken Dorsey had been doing. But some of that was, it marginalized Stephon Diggs, and not in the normal way where it might marginalize a player like that, because I think the thing is, it was a better version of an offense. I mean, they went 6-1 after they made that change. I think that Josh Allen was still thinking his way through things, because there were times where Stephon Diggs was wide open, deep, and probably should have been the read, but I think that Josh Allen was just kind of relearning some things. And whenever you relearn things, things are a little bit different. But like the film shows that Stephon Diggs was totally getting open, was just as quick as he had been, as he was earlier in the season when he was on pace for 1,600 yards. It's not like the drop off in production was tied to an injury or anything like that. He was on pace for 1,600 yards. Things got janky. Everything was weird. And then all of a sudden, Stephon Diggs was marginalized. So things were weird in Buffalo last year. It's like talking to your parents about the 60s. Things were weird. You just don't hold them to the behavior or the commune that they lived at in the 60s. Next question was, and a couple of you asked about me, both my haircut and the shave. Shave was kind of an accident. I didn't have an attachment on the clippers, and by the time I went up, like, it was done. And I do think it makes me look younger, which was the reason I didn't like being clean shaven when I was younger. Now that I'm older, I might stick with the clean shave, even though my wife hates it. But what's she gonna do? Leave me with this face? My God. Okay. He's asked a question about the fact that now, after being the hunters, what is it like now that they are the hunted?
I appreciate the question, but we're always hunting. That doesn't change for us. We're always hunting. Expectations on the outside, whatever that may be, it really doesn't change who we are, right? It doesn't. The expectations from the outside don't permeate inside our building, and now we have to change what we're doing just because of outside expectations. It really doesn't matter, right? My message, our focus as a team it's always been consistent, the same as it was last year, is, man, you show up and we continue to get better every single day. You're the best at your position, you're the best for our team, then that's what wins games, right? For us, when everybody is really striving, putting the work in, right, to be better. And that's what it's all about. We don't care about expectations. Talk doesn't win games. We have to go out and play good football when that time comes.
Yeah, and I think as it's always been with a lot of these key guys since DeMeco came in, there's going to be talk of humility. I would imagine CJ mentions humility at least once, and not getting complacent. And then also just everything that DeMeco just said, which it sounds like a lot of cliche, but like DeMeco lives it and breathes it. The worst thing in the world is if guys start believing everything that they read about themselves, and then all of a sudden you start off by getting punched in the jaw, and maybe you drop a couple games early on, and then guys they're like the rich kid that gets out into the world and realizes, like, oh, that was daddy's money. Turns out I'm not actually. I haven't done anything special myself at all, and it's a huge shaking of their foundations. You don't want these guys to be the rich kids, no matter how rich they are in actual life. In the metaphor, you don't want them to be rich. Next question. Wait, somebody had a question here. Lucky Mrs. Payne. Yes. Do you believe that Diggs was more limited late in the season because they knew they were going to trade him. I don't think so. I don't know if they knew for sure they were going to trade him, other than unless there's reports that I've been sleeping on. I think that a lot of what happened. I think, you know what, honestly, you know what, I'm glad this isn't going to be the answer you're looking for, except that it is a theory of mine. I do think that part of trying to diversify the offense, while they were also still winning games with the Bills, included the fact that perhaps in the playoffs, that's when Stephon Diggs, like late in the Kansas City game, had an opportunity to score a long touchdown, but he dropped the ball. Like, they sprung him in that game, and that was not Stephon Diggs' best game at all. He had 2 bad drops. He had a fumble. But I think at least part of going away from him was so that they could come back to him more effectively. Think like this is a somewhat of a bad example, but Antonio Brown, it's already a bad example. Antonio Brown and Gronk when they were in Tampa. Now, those are 2 guys that were not the same guys as when they were in their prime, Gronk especially. But what happened in the playoffs was, all right, Gronk became the most lethal decoy ever. I'm talking about in Tampa. Because he all of a sudden had some big moments in the playoffs, likewise for Antonio Brown. So I think it was more just a genuine effort to have a more diverse offense. They got to the offseason and they realized, all right, with all the guys we have to say goodbye to, with Stephon Diggs being, what's a euphemism for headache? Having his monthly visitor, I don't know. It was time. It was just time. Thing is, sometimes, as Lovie Smith once said, sometimes divorce is a good thing. As Lovie Smith once said 97 times. What are you looking for from the defensive tackle position?
With our defensive tackles position, what we're looking for, we play an attack style front, and we want guys who can attack. We want guys, you can do that no matter the size, right? You talk about, is there a certain size you're looking for? I've seen guys do it at 280, 290, seen guys do it at 315. So there's a different range for different types of players. It's all about our guys just being explosive up front and being able to do what we're asking them to do.
Yeah. He didn't say 365. I was keenly waiting for what the weight range was going to be. He said from 285 to 315. So T'Vondre Sweat at 365, at least for the purposes of this example, is 50 pounds over the explosivity body weight range. And it's a shame because I think he could be explosive at like 340. But if you got him all down, slimmed down to Vita Vea's size at 340 or 345, I think he really could be. I don't think that T'Vondre Sweat's going to be the guy for the Texans, with or without the DUI. I think it's just, I see value in having kind of a rhythm buster there, is just having an extreme space eater who's also athletic, but I'm not going to get too wrapped up in it. Especially the defensive tackle position. It's going all over the place in the mock drafts. I think, like Mel Kiper just did a mock the other day where Johnny Newton fell to the 3rd round. I'm going to do a few more defensive linemen. I've done a few already on the channel if you want to look for them, but it's getting really fascinating with the defensive linemen. I think that if you look at, like Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, big rangy guys that weren't necessarily bulky. They're big, but not necessarily bulky. And I think that's probably what DeMeco's dream scenario is: a super athletic guy who's big, but not bulky. A guy who's like 6'6", 310, 305. And those guys really aren't, this is not a great year for freakishly gifted defensive tackles, which is, for DeMeco, who wanted to build through, again, continue to bolster the front 7. If there was a year where DeMeco Ryans' team was going to trade out of the 1st round, this would make sense given that they've got their 2 edge rushers, and the defensive linemen just don't look all that hot so far. And now some of them are going to end up being really good. Don't get me wrong, but by conventional, scouting standards. So somebody asked, why add wide receiver to a position of strength, or why add more playmakers?
I don't think it hurts to add a lot of playmakers to your team. So as many guys as you can add, we're trying to add as many playmakers as we can, offensively, defensively, right? We're trying to build the best team for 2024. And that's what myself and Nick, that's what our job is, to add the right pieces, acquire the right players to have us go out and be our best in 2024.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if people like the Daryl Morey comparison or not, but there's a lot of similarities to Nick and Daryl Morey. One is just both of them love to trade all the time, anytime. Now Daryl gets to do it from Eastern Europe and various other places, where Nick Caserio is basically bound to be in the United States. But they're going to make trades. They're going to be active. But also Daryl Morey's theory has always kind of been, hey, add as much talent as you can and let the coaches and players sort it out. Sometimes that ends up being with like a Chris Paul and a James Harden, who are at their best when they're not on the court together. But I do think that if you look at what Nick has done right now, I think they've set the team up to they want to get to a point where they can just, when they see an opportunity to add a playmaker and it's at a good price, like a Stephon Diggs, where you can trade minimal assets for him. I think that's more so than any specific position. I think that's what they're hoping for. And that's the way, I mean, look at how it happened with Danielle Hunter. They were looking to add Eric Armstead. All of a sudden, Danielle Hunter became available. Now you could have used either of those guys, but they just kind of dropped everything and shifted very quickly. How can CJ improve in year 2?
What's one way where you really think he can improve in year 2?
Yeah, with CJ, we're very proud of his success in his first year. I mean, he came in and probably shocked a lot of people with how he played, and he played at a very high level. He continued to progress and get better throughout the entire year. So we're very excited about what he was able to do. Now, can he pick up where he left from, right? As he finished the year off, he had a strong year, but as a player, you always are your toughest critic. Can he continue to master the same thing I talked about, those techniques and fundamentals? Can he master those things to continue to lead our team in the way that he's done it? Excited to be able to work with him for another year. I think for all of our younger players, especially the rookies last year, that year 1 to year 2, that's where you see the biggest jump, or I've seen in my career. And the guys have a true offseason to dedicate, right, and focus on themselves and them getting better. They don't have to worry about combine or draft prep. They can truly work on the things that we've asked them to do. And I think it's also a plus for him by having Coach Slowick, Coach Gerard, having them back, and we're still doing our same scheme, right, same system. So he's already a step ahead of where he started last year. So I'm excited to see his growth from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part that's exciting about that, because I know CJ talks about that element of it, just being able to focus on the Texans offense all year, all offseason, instead of meetings. Like this time last year, he was doing top 30 visits and all of that, as opposed to really diving in and just starting to learn more. But again, to go back to that humility theme, CJ has said multiple times that he realizes that he doesn't know nearly what he will know, and there's a lot more to learn, and that he doesn't even know what he doesn't know yet. There's just whole other course levels that he needs to get to, and that's part of the biggest battle. I mean, there's some guys that come in and have a good rookie year and they really think they've made it. They just really don't understand or comprehend how much more difficult it gets once you've called attention to yourself. You can just walk through unnoticed through a crowd until all of a sudden you go and peacock, and he peacocked all last year long. He might as well be wearing a big ascot or something, but everybody knows who he is. I think if you look at some of the finer points of the game, obviously there's always blitz recognition, there's mastering pass protection, getting involved in the run game. All of that stuff are things where he can take it next level this year. I think especially the pre-snap recognition side of things, when he starts to now have this book that he's writing in his brain and on paper of like all the different tendencies of guys when they're blitzing, when they're not. I was going back and watching some old Tom Brady stuff this weekend, and it was, I'll tell you, like as a defensive lineman playing against Peyton Manning, or I played against Peyton Manning a bunch, but like playing against a guy like Tom Brady, hopefully CJ Stroud at some point. Like one of the most disheartening things is when you think you got a really good blitz dialed up and the quarterback hits a hard count, and you just know that like, okay, this is a safety blitz and our safety just flinched on the hard count. And now Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or CJ Stroud knows exactly what's coming, and then they shift the protection. And like, oh, we're just gonna get killed now. Like that's where you want to get CJ to, and he's on his way there. It's just a matter of just like slowing everything down pre-snap. Like, what can you do in those 20 seconds or so that you really have to operate? That's where I think he's going to take a huge leap forward this year. Okay, so let's see. I think somebody mentioned that you added a lot of defensive tackles in the offseason.
On defense, almost half of your outside free agent ads came at that D tackle position. Outside of Rankins and Collins leaving, what led to that?
When it comes to free agency, then acquisitions, there's a lot of things that go on, like behind the scenes, that a lot of people would have no idea, how this happened. How did you move on from this player? How did you acquire this player? A lot of things happen, but at the end of the day, I feel like me and Nick made the best decisions for our team to add quality players to our team, and we feel that can help us.
Okay, so you lost both your starting defensive tackles, one in a botched trade, one in a just you failed that you didn't compete, or whatever, you weren't competitive in the offer. I'm not all broken up over it, over Sheldon Rankins. But then I think when you talk about scrambling to replace them and be sure that you don't go into the draft with extreme needs, Fadakasi, Tim Settle. DeMeco Autry, depending on he wasn't signed to be a defensive tackle. So I don't, DeMeco kind of chuckled about all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I don't know. I don't think there's anything scandalous there or anything that he doesn't want to talk about. I think it's just that when they pivoted to go sign Danielle Hunter, a lot of other things all of a sudden kind of fell out of order and maybe fell by the wayside. So that's just where they were. I think adding impact edge rushers when you're not necessarily, it's not like they added impact pass rushers and they lost out on an all-pro defensive tackle or something. I think that they still want to improve their ability to penetrate and their ability to rush the passer from that position. But one of the reasons they added so many defensive tackles is just, they had to pivot. They had to pivot at some point. I don't think that was their grand plan going into it. How are conversations different with free agents this year compared to last year? I believe was the spirit of the question.
Conversations with free agents, how were they different this offseason compared to your first season when you were trying to, get some ground?
Yeah, free agency for me, it doesn't change, right? It's always you're trying to find the right fit, not only player fitting us, but for that player, do we actually fit what you're about? And so it's always trying to find that call it that marriage of player and organization, and just go through guys and trying to find out what's important for those guys, right? What's their why, what makes them tick, and trying to see if they're ready to hunt with the Texans. And so it's we've added a lot of guys who really love football. That's the one thing for me where I want to add guys to our team. How passionate are they about football? How excited are they about going out and working and getting better every day?
Everything it says right there. I think when you have the chance to really sit down and have a conversation with a free agent, that's good to know. But I think the time pressures and constraints of free agency mean that you don't really get to have those conversations, especially with the more marquee guys. And I think that probably applies way more to the draft. And Will Anderson brings it up later on too. He says that you got to have the right kind of DNA to play for the Texans, which is kind of cool. I got a kind of little bit, like I bowed up a little bit. Like I put my chest out. And then I remembered, that was 20 years ago that I wasn't on this version of the Texans. But how CJ and Will are both talking that way. It's kind of cool. As far as like guys who actually really just are all about football, or I think in the spirit of the original question, which guys came to the Texans that maybe wouldn't have last year? I think that the Mixon trade might not have been as smooth or happened as easily. I suppose that might be one way I might put that. Or like, like when you're trading for a veteran player, you want to be sure that he actually wants to come to your team. And I don't know if Mixon last year would have been in that boat, especially coming off of at that point, he would have been a two years in a row captain. Now he's 3. So I don't know if the Mixon trade would have happened even if they wanted it to. I don't think DeMeco Autry is an interesting one. DeMeco Autry might have come. I don't think there's a chance in hell Danielle Hunter would have come here on the deal that he did, unless the Texans were, and maybe I'm completely wrong on that. I just think it was the perfect blend of a guy who's just like still in his prime and had a chance to go play for the team that he liked as a kid and play in front of his family and everything. That's probably not something that would have happened. And then the Stephon Diggs trade too. I don't think the Stephon Diggs trade would have happened because again, you don't want to trade for a guy like Stephon Diggs when he really doesn't want to come to your team. 100%. That like you do not want to do that because then things get ugly real quick. Next question. Oh, how's Tank Dell doing? Yeah.
Tank is back. He's starting to get in with our guys here at the offseason program. So excited to have Tank back. That was a devastating loss for us last year, losing him. He's such a dynamic player for us, such an inspiration for myself, for a lot of our team. So I'm excited to see Tank back working with our guys and excited to see him make that same jump that I talked about year 1 and year 2.
Okay. I'm glad he said that. As far as Tank Dell's energy and the effect he has on people, because that's something that Bobby Slowick was gushing about Tank Dell during the season at one point. I think maybe it was after Tank Dell got injured, but just about his energy and his competitiveness and everything, and like everything that goes with a dude that's the size he is but plays the way he does. It's really cool. And the fact that Tank Dell and CJ Stroud are so tight, the fact that I've seen Tank Dell run routes and do his agility drills now and everything, I think probably 70% of the people or more watching this live stream have seen that Tank Dell is looking really good. That is the one thing. The one thing about DeMeco that I was excited to watch and see, and one of the reasons I endorsed him so heavily, like back when everybody thought that he wouldn't even be interested in the job, was that there are like every single football coach talks about culture and establishing a culture. And I think very few really have a plan for it or maybe the ability to do it. And I just know that DeMeco's a different type of person. And I think in being who he is, he can identify the right kinds of guys, but I think also the people gravitate towards him and people want to adopt that mindset and that attitude. And, you see this in football teams a lot. Like players take on the persona of their coach and you've seen DeMeco, she's like the perfect freaking human being when it comes to being able to play a violent sport, but then be like a solid citizen off of it. Those are hard things to intermingle and to mesh up. And there's something about having a guy like that, that I think just, it brings out the best in the players. So being able to identify the right kinds of guys and then being able to bring out the absolute best elements in those guys who are the right kinds of guys. Frankly, it's stuff I don't even usually feel comfortable talking about because everybody talks about it, but nobody follows through on it. But I think with DeMeco, you guys have seen he's just different. I knew it from the first 3 weeks that I knew him, or at least of actual training camp in 2006. He's just a different human being. It's crazy. What do you have to watch out for with young guys who are in their second year who maybe had a taste of success in year 1?
The biggest thing I think, Kim, from year 1 to year 2 is you have to watch guys who've had a lot of success, right? Guys, you can't fall into a trap of that you've made it, right? Just because you have success in year 1, that doesn't garner that you're going to instantly have success in year 2, right? You still have to put in even more work, right? Because now you have a year worth of tendencies on tape. Other teams around the league are watching you. They're kind of honing in on what you do well. So how are you going to attack your offseason and truly focus on improving your craft and being better than you were in year 1? Guys can't, you can't fall asleep to, I did it 1 year, it's easy. and you relax your second year. That's the biggest thing I've seen where guys kind of have that drop in their second years where they relax and they think they have that I made it moment. Nobody's ever made it. You continue to put the work in, you dive in even harder because you've had success.
I'll tell you the other thing too is guys have a first full off season with so much free time on their hands, and that's a learned skill to know what to do with all that free time on your hands. Sometimes during COVID, some players have way too much free time on their hands. So I don't worry about that with most of these guys. If I had to pick a year 2 player to be worried about, who should I be worried about? Let's see. Okay, so going back, I wasn't worried about Jalen Petrie going into year 2. Jalen Petrie, this is the difference. What I worry about with Jalen Petrie was that Petrie got a whole lot of attention for making a lot of tackles on a really bad football team. And that's not the same as being a genuinely good NFL player. There's on any bad football team, there's going to be a few defensive players that have a boatload of tackles because they're always on defense and nobody else around is tackling enough. And Jalen Petrie was that guy, but it wasn't like he had actually really genuinely learned how to play safety yet. So for Jalen, it wasn't like he all of a sudden lost his work ethic or anything like that at all. I think it was that he'd never advanced as far as maybe people had allowed him to believe. And that's the dangerous thing. And again, that's all speculation on my side. Doesn't have anything to do with him being complacent or anything. It's just a matter of he wasn't as advanced as maybe a lot of us thought he was. So that when all of a sudden you see where he genuinely is in his development, it's kind of a shock to your system. I think that DeMeco may have understood and realized and recognized that already. So maybe it wasn't that much of a shock or a surprise to him. And that's why I don't think that they're panicking about Jalen Petrie as much as it might feel like they should be panicking about Petrie based on the drop off. What do you on his hopes for Derek Stingley heading into this season?
Yeah, for Derek and what I look for him this year, I look for him to continue to make strides in his game. He's come along really well. 5 interceptions last year, played really well for us. When you talk about attacking the ball, really shutting down one side of the field, it was impressive to see him grow as a player, coming back off the injury and just seeing the way he worked and the way he got after it. He was a guy that teams started to go away from. So it's whenever you have a corner who can operate in that manner, right, it's only a plus for us, and I see Derek continuing to get better this year as well.
So with Derek Stingley, I think the biggest and most exciting development at the end of last year, I'll say 2 things. In the development of DeMeco Ryans as a coach and the development of Derek Stingley as a player was when they had him travel with Amari Cooper the vast majority of the time in the Browns playoff game. That was really cool, and that's a sign of things to come, I think. But also the development of DeMeco Ryans in acting the week before that game like they would never do that with Derek Stingley. That was cool because that was A-plus gamesmanship, I think, for a guy that is very uncomfortable with the coach speak, which coach speak is just it's sanctioned lying. When a coach, it's just there's certain times where they just have to lie, and some guys do it like they're breathing, and that's what they were born to do. Other guys struggle with it. And DeMeco gets very uncomfortable when he has to get into any kind of coach speak. So the fact that he was able to sell that they wouldn't have Derek Stingley travel with with Amari Cooper, I feel like he's been corrupted just enough. Now just keep DeMeco right there. He doesn't need any further corruption. Just every now and then something like that. Last one was a question about Aziz Al-Shire, the linebacker that the Texans added.
By adding Aziz to our team, you guys see we're getting a tenacious player, a guy who plays with relentless passion, energy, physical. The thing with Aziz that stood out for me last year was his first time really getting an opportunity to play full time as a starter. And he had been in a backup role when we were there in San Francisco for a while, and he showed that he was capable of running the show and showed that he was able to stay healthy throughout the entire year. So he was durable. He was a playmaker. He was physical. He was the leader of that defense. So excited to add not only Aziz as a player, but at Aziz, the leader. And I think he's grown as a leader, and I'm excited to work with him again.
Yeah, and I think Aziz Alshire, before we move into Will Anderson, he's got all of that kind of underdog tenacity, chip on the shoulder, all of that stuff that DeMeco probably really respects. And I think was able to see maybe him operate as a younger player in San Francisco and absorb and learn, as he was a Sam linebacker, and then he had to go play, I believe he played Will in replacement for Greenlaw there. Just how well he was able to do as a younger player. And then he transitioned into a guy who's actually a team leader and the smart guy. And I imagine he'll be wearing the green dot and calling the plays this year. Alshire might be the most unheralded acquisition that ends up having the biggest impact. Because I know a lot of people, and I know in the mock drafts, they're still saying the Texans will draft an off-ball linebacker. And yes, I like Edgerrin Cooper. I think the kid's great. I love the way he plays, but it's not something that they need to draft to have a starter right now. They've got their two starting, Mike and Will, and until we see otherwise. A couple good questions here. Before we go to Will Anderson. Daniel Bartlett said, how does a player like Petrie go about improving during the offseason? And I think a couple of you are going to have a similar answer to what I had, which is a lot of it with Petrie, really, some of it boils down to trust. And as a safety, it's tough, because you're supposed to come up and make plays, but you're also supposed to be that safety net. And we saw the worst version of it in the Browns game, the first Browns game, when Petrie decided to leave that poor cornerback. I don't even want to say his name. In the first rep, he'd taken a cornerback all year long on Amari Cooper down the sideline because the linebackers, this is where the trust comes in. The linebackers hadn't gotten enough depth and hadn't picked up the tight end on a crossing route. And that's when Petrie's not trying to be selfish or anything. It's just Petrie's trying to do the right thing and come up and make a play, but ends up not being the most important thing about being a safety, which is the safety part. It's in the name of the position, safety. You're supposed to make things be safer. You're supposed to be a safety net. And there's just too many instances like that where some of it's, it's not a matter of intelligence. It's more a matter of psychology and maturity. And I don't say that he's immature or anything. It's just, and part of it is just getting reps at the position, because he wasn't really a safety in college. He was a rover linebacker / slot corner, just do it all, super athletic kid who's awesome. And he's still all those things. He just needs to be a little bit more regimented, and a little bit more disciplined, I think, a little bit more focused in how he plays. So hopefully that's as simple as just him having a year's worth of film in an off season to do it. Yeah, Alshire's nasty. Very nasty in all the right kinds of ways. So let's get to Will Anderson here just a second. All right. Will Anderson spoke to the Texans. No, we'll start that over. I'm going to cut this up to be its own standalone. Most people see a 2-hour live stream, and they're not gonna click on the 2-hour live stream. So I'll just do 2 hours on Will Anderson. Will Anderson spoke to the media today. First day of off-season program for the Texans, coming off his Defensive Rookie of the Year performance. You can see that he's got his hair laid down and in some nice braids. It's not funky and wild like it was. Looks like his beard's a little doesn't have the playoff beard going on anymore. I like this. I like this Will Anderson. I hope that he hasn't tamed himself too much, though. First question that we have on here was, can you make what's your mentality on entering year 2?
Build on last year. What's your mentality for some of the guys in the locker room about wanting to get further and be better this year?
Yeah, I think it's just you seen what we did last year, and you seen how each game we kept getting better and better. And I think that's one thing that we're focusing on is that individual growth, but also that team growth is just seeing how much better we can be if we just cut out the mistakes and everybody just doing the techniques right and taking this time to properly learn how to play within the scheme, how to build those techniques, and how we can be a better team.
Yeah, there you go. He just gave the same speech to Petrie. Limiting the mistakes. There's an old saying that Dom Capers used to say all the time was more games are lost than won in the NFL. And before you go thinking like, oh, that's a loser mentality or anything, lots of people like I believe I've heard Belichick say some version of that before. It really is like it's so much about it for every coach. It's the balance of complexity but execution. Like too much complexity and all of a sudden your execution goes down and guys make mental errors. You make it too simple and nobody makes mental errors, but the offense knows exactly what you're doing on defense and vice versa. So it's always about finding that balance. But like eradicating those mental errors that the Texans made. They made a lot of mental errors last year. That was okay. I'm glad that Will answered the way he did. Some of the very, very, very worst games and performances they had, like the Jets. Like remember the Jets where it would have been nice to just blame it on the weather, except that the weather didn't matter for Zach Wilson because the defense made so many stupid mistakes. Like those games, if you want to be a championship team, you got to get rid of those. And obviously that's what DeMeco is preaching to these guys. And I think a lot of it will be with guys being familiar with the system, with your younger guys playing in your second year now and on and on and on. It will be a much cleaner team this year. Next one was, what's your, is your routine any different in year two?
How does your off-season regimen change this year from, when you're in college?
Oh, it changed a lot, man. No school, no classwork, not having to wake up early and go to study hall or anything like that. It was really fun, though. I took a little time off, I think this is the first vacation I had in like years. So I took a little vacation, man, but really just focusing on my body. It was way better. I could learn about myself more, learn about my body more. I got to work with some great vets over the off season and learn from them as well. So the routine has been really great.
Dude, the crazy thing, your first off season is going on a vacation, like an actual adult vacation, where I'm not talking about going to hedonism or anything. I mean, like an adult, like a vacation that adults go on, where you go to a resort or on a cruise or something. Like I remember doing that with for the first time, like after my second year, because I'd met my wife and we went off on a vacation, my first actual vacation, and I remember I took her on a cruise, but I had some sticker shock for how much cruises were. So I thought for sure, I was like, wow, I don't know, $1,500 is a lot for a freaking little tiny. Like that's gotta be a nice room on a ship, right? And no, it's not. Even in $1999 or $1998, it was miserable. There were no windows. It was hot all the time. We were down with the crew basically. That was the big luxurious lifestyle that I sucked my wife in with. Next question. But I'm guessing Will's making better money than I was in my second year in the NFL. I was barely scraping by. He was asked, have you been able to talk to Danielle Hunter all that much?
Have you had an opportunity to work with Danielle Hunter? And if so, what type of pairing do you think you guys will be able to develop?
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to work with him yet, but it was crazy how everything just took place because I got a chance to meet him at Pro Bowl. To come to find out he's with the same agency. So, me and him have been talking back and forth. And, man, he's a great guy. He loves ball. He doesn't want to do anything else but play football. And I know he loves cars. But having a guy like that, a vet in the room like that, who can inspire so many of us, teach us so much stuff and we can learn from him. He has a lot of great tools, a lot of great ability. He has great leadership, and he just knows what it takes to be one of the greats in this league, man. So I'm very eager to learn from him, to play along beside him, and really just see how this thing goes, man. We're really excited.
I got to ask you guys, I was surprised that nobody asked DeMeco whether Stefon Diggs was at the offseason program or not. And I don't know if there's been any news about that. Not that it's not a huge deal. I'm just curious. I'd be excited if I found out that he was, but I've also, ever since my show is over today, I really haven't been able to pay attention to anything. So you guys are probably more plugged in on that than I am. Yeah, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson are going to get along just fine. Like, again, when you go on to like the wholesome meter, I get the feeling that like Danielle Hunter is up there with Will Anderson on the wholesome meter, where they just seem like good dudes who like Will just wants to like play football and be nice to people, and Danielle Hunter, I've gotten that vibe from him as well. He's just very focused on football. Let's see, just got here. Looking like this season's going to be epic. Yes. Love me some Cashman and Grenard. I mean, no disrespect. I think what DeMeco did with them is an indication we were about to have a way better defense with these guys. Yeah, like you've leveled up a bit, you know. And I think like Cashman, aside from injury concerns, he's a different type of linebacker than Alshire. Alshire, I think first and foremost, like what I liked seeing today a couple times was ever since that Colts game at the end of the year, I just want to see linebackers who are really good with their run pass recognition, because the play action destroyed the Texans last year. And then and part of it was that sometimes the linebackers were just like they were too lustful over stopping the run. And that's a good thing to have and everything. It's like you got to just exercise discretion, though. And sometimes the judgment was just off of those guys. Christian Harris gets away with it because he's a rookie, or because he was a young player. But like some of the veteran players, like Alshire is the kind of guy that I think DeMeco's looking for when it comes to that kind of stuff. What are you looking to improve going into the second year?
You were an edge player that ranked in the top 3 in run stop, win rate, and pass. Where did you look?
Okay, so Jason Braddock said you were, I think, as a pass rusher and as a run stopper, you're like in the top 3 on the ESPN win rate. So like percentage of times that you win the pass rush, or the percentage of the times that you win the rundown. I'm going to say something about that stat at the end of this, but I believe Will feels a similar way as I do about that stat.
Look to improve this season going into your sophomore year?
Yeah, I don't get too caught up in those things, man. The only thing I can keep focused on is how am I getting better? How am I helping the team, reach the goal automatically that we want to reach? And what is my plan going into this season? How am I, transitioning from my first year to this year? How am I taking that leap? So really, it's not about the statistics, it's not about the stats. It's about individual growth every day. How am I growing? How am I becoming a better player? How am I taking care of my body? How am I doing all these things to help the team?
He talked about that at the end of the year. Like he specifically brought up the win rate percentage and how he didn't like it, because in the first half of the season, you remember both he and Grenard were like in the top 3 or 5 for pass rush win rate and run stop win rate. But that pass rush win rate is based on GPS data. And I think a lot of times it just, as long as the defensive player gets within a certain distance of the quarterback, I think they consider it a win. And like Will wasn't there. There were times where he was getting close and maybe he made the quarterback a little uncomfortable, but by Will's standards, that wasn't a win. And that is where some of the stats weren't catching up to how well he was playing, because it was just that last little bit of finishing that he figured out in the second half of the season. And he figured it out like after he also just was playing with a sprained ankle, So that part of it, like I don't he's got a lot of things that he's going to work on his game this year. The big improvement in the jump that he made in the second half of the season was a lot of it was his launch angle coming out of his stance. He did a much better job setting things up. He anticipated chip blocks way better. And like he had a plan for when he was going to get chipped. He knew it was coming and he had a plan for how he was going to handle it. Those little finer parts of the game, he was really catching on to. And I think in the offseason, sometimes I would imagine with Will, there's so many resources available now. A lot of it is just watching film of your favorite pass rushers. Get to Von Miller's pass rush summit if you can, and do all that stuff. I think this could end up being a really, really good year for Will Anderson. I'm really excited about like the things that he was able to learn in season. If he applies that in the off season, it's going to be pretty cool. Next question for Will Anderson was his thoughts on Denico Autry.
Yeah, he just brings a type of different juice to the team, especially the position group, man. He's excited to have somebody like that in the group, somebody that can bounce around from the inside to the outside. And it just helps everybody in the room, because now teams are like, well, this guy's going to line up right here, this guy's going to line up right here, this guy's going to line up right here. So they have to give an account to everybody on the D-line. So it's really exciting to have a guy like that in the room, man. He's very physical. He plays his butt off. I got a chance to watch him last year go against us, and, man, he's very disruptive. So he's another guy that I can't wait to play alongside of.
Yeah, Denico, kind of like Alshire. Like those are the two guys that a lot of people in Tennessee really didn't want to lose in free agency. And it stinks because Tennessee, they did a good job regrouping. I still think they've got some like fundamental issues that they're going to have to overcome, but they did a better job in the offseason than it looked like they were going to at first. But like both those guys they're DeMeco kind of guys. Like you watch Danico Autry and Alshire play, you're like, oh, okay, yeah. This is, you know what this is? It's tough, smart, and dependable. That's right. They are what Bill O'Brien was always looking for, but could never identify because he thought that smart and dependable meant like you're a nerd who like was nice to all of his professors in college or something. Wrong kind of nice. It's good. You can be that kind of nice, but or smart and dependable, but you got to be other types of smart and dependable too. Next question for Will Anderson was what was the offseason like with like various people coming up to him and complimenting him about how the Texans had done. This is a good answer.
Yeah, it was a lot at the Pro Bowl, man. It was a lot of guys like, yeah, tell them I'm trying to come over there. Like, tell DeMeco I'm loving saying, but I'm like, Texas ain't for everybody, man. It's just it's a different type of DNA you have to play here, man. It's a different type of character you have to have. And you just got to love football, man. And I think, the front office and coach, they do a really good job of choosing the guys that they want to be in here that, can help change the culture and help keep uplifting the culture and, being a positive impact, not only on the building, but in the locker room as well.
So let's be clear about this. Will Anderson was telling dudes at the Pro Bowl that you got to have a certain type of DNA. These guys are trying to pin DeMeco with a tampering charge, and DeMeco's acting like the gatekeeper, being like, no, I'm not gonna bring your crap to DeMeco. So I'm looking at the Pro Bowl from this year and trying to figure out who exactly maybe approached DeMeco. Let's see. Max Crosby? I know he ended up getting something figured out. Trey Hendrickson? I don't know. Which one of these guys would have been deemed un-Texans worthy by Will Anderson? I know it wasn't DeForest Buckner. I know it wouldn't have been Matabike. I think Matabike would have been a DeMeco type of guy. I don't know, man. I don't know. I gotta find out from Will exactly who these guys were that weren't Texans worthy at the Pro Bowl. Jalen Ramsey, maybe? I don't know. Patrick Surtain? We'll figure it out. Next time one of these guys becomes a free agent. Next question was, what are his thoughts on the free agency moves the Texans made in general?
Yeah, my overall thoughts have just been, man, it's just been a blessing. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a phenomenal thing that is going on here, man. And we really just want to focus on the present right now, man. Like, yeah, we got all the pieces that we got. How can we build on it? And it starts right now. It starts with OTAs. It starts with everybody showing up, everybody grinding, everybody getting better. Like I said, focusing on those techniques. And so when we get to the season, we can see how it goes. But right now, man, getting those pieces here, getting that connection, getting the chemistry, and getting all those things in the building right now is what's going to help us.
Yeah, Will's big on chemistry. Will talked about that at the end of the year, just the chemistry and the culture and all that stuff, and being positive for everybody. Like, you know what, man, there's one thing about, as a veteran player, even when you're established, I mean, like Peyton Manning talked about this. So I got to interview Peyton and Eli Manning for a function at the Texas Children's Hospital. And Peyton talked about when he went to Denver for the first time. Like, this is Peyton Manning. He was already a future Hall of Famer at that point, but that, he had to establish himself as a leader, and he didn't want to step too far forward and, try to present himself as a leader before he had proven himself as a player. And he was coming off his neck injury and everything. But I could see, so as a veteran player, sometimes, even if you're established and you come into a new place, it's a little uncomfortable, like you're the new kid at school. And it's got to be really cool having guys like Will Anderson there who are just like completely without snark or cynicism or anything, and are just going to like welcome you in. They're going to tell you, to be sure, like, okay, we do things different here. You got to have Texans DNA. But like to have that level of positivity, it's a cool thing. And for like somebody like Will that genuinely cares about establishing the culture and everything, that's just, you don't see that from young guys. That's where like DeMeco, CJ, and Will are all just like exceptional human beings. And I don't mean that, I'm not trying to say that like in, although I do believe they are excellent human beings. When I say exceptional, I mean that like they are exceptions in a lot of different ways. They just operate differently than most human beings. It's really cool. I'm always a little bit jealous of those guys because they've just they've got things figured out better than most of us, or at least me. I'm sure you guys are all fine. I'm sure it's just everything's. I'm sure you're all fucking great. This is on his. Okay. Does it feel different this year? Does everything feel different, or does it feel different for him?
Every day feels the same. I walked in with a big smile on my face. Everybody had a big smile on their face, and we was all just excited to see each other, man. But the energy in the locker room has always been great. You know, no matter who we had in there, it's just the type of guys that we have here, man. And I could tell all the new guys that are here, and it's just like, it's crazy because just like I said, it's just the people that they chose in the building. It didn't feel like any drop off. Like you see all the new guys, and it's like, dang, they belong here. Like they feel like they've been here already, and I think that's a good thing when you have a locker room like that.
Yeah, what I tell you. See, they feel like they belong already. How does he feel about the new uniforms? I've seen a lot of you have asked about the uniforms. I did not make it to the unveiling a few weeks ago, and I have not quizzed any of the dudes or women who went there because I know that they're sworn not to say anything at all, and I know I just don't like being that. You guys know my policy on that. Like my friends that are coaches, I kind of I get nervous when they talk to me because I don't want them divulging any secrets that they're going to end up getting fired for. So I know very little about the uniforms. I have very little inside information. So this is Will being asked about the new uniforms.
Well, you're one of the players who got a chance to get a sneak peek at the new uniforms. What do you think about it? Because I heard you were excited. You were jumping up and down like.
Yeah, I think they're dope. I think it really just gives back to the Houston community. I think it really does a really good job of getting the community back involved with football, back involved with, you know, the Texans brand of ball. And I'm really excited for everybody to see them. I know it was a little leak out there, but I'm really excited for everybody to get a chance to see what they got going on here.
Yeah, so far, like there haven't been any player leaks. It was just whoever it was that took the picture that let it go earlier on. Will was apparently very excited about it. It's hard to tell when, like in this setting, he's kind of gone back into his. Remember when Bill O'Brien had everybody answer, "I'm just going to be the best teammate that I can be." I feel like when it comes to the jersey questions, those are the answers we've gotten. I'm just going to be the best teammate I can be. This is on his relationship with CJ Stroud. He's a quarterback for the Texans, everybody.
I think we were just being our authentic selves. Like, he gets to be him, I get to be me, and we come together and we just be goofy all the time. And we're just those young selves getting to come to work every day and love football. But we also know that balance of when it's time to get serious. And I think that's what helps us a lot. We have a healthy balance of when to play and, like, when do we need to, like, chill out and we need to lock in. And just his work ethic, man. I think a lot of people in the locker room took note of that very quickly. Like, this guy, he comes to work every day. Like, he wants to be the best. Like, he wants to be the greatest to ever do it. And that's the type of mindset that I have. So seeing a guy like that just pushes you more. And it just built that connection through the whole building, because when people see that, they want to feed off that and they want to be a part of that too.
The part about them having fun and being goofy and all of that's another little bit of an offshoot of having a head coach like DeMeco. Because you can have, like, Ted Johnson and I used to talk about this because we both played for a couple of, like, the all-time hard asses. Ted Johnson played for Bill Belichick. I played for Tom Coughlin. And one of the things that would happen is at the end of the season, you would just feel, you'd walk out of the building and realize, like, oh my God, there was just this huge weight on me the entire time. Like, the whole time you're in that building during the season, you just feel so much pressure. And, like, those guys thrive. Belichick, Coughlin thrive on just on kind of making guys uncomfortable. They want them to fear for their jobs. They want them to, you know, just always have that razor's edge, which is one way to do it. There's nothing ineffective about it when those two do it, but there's also other ways to do it. And I always found myself a little bit jealous of like people who played for coaches that could get it done different ways. Now, I guess ultimately, if you're trying to win 6 Super Bowls, there's not really an established precedent to do it other than Belichick's way. Although Parcells is a pretty, or excuse me, not Parcells, Walsh. Walsh was a relatively laid back and chill dude. Like, he was the first one that had everybody, like, didn't practice in pads hardly ever. And this was back in the 70s, you know, like when everybody's all worried about, like, oh, what are you going to do when you can't practice in pads? Like, I don't know. The 49ers were doing it in the 70s and doing just fine. So I digress. Last question for Will before we get on to CJ. How are they handling the raised expectations for the team?
Man, he's unbelievable, bro. And to see him work every day, to see him come in, he's quiet, he doesn't say much, but when you turn the tape on, you just see him like everywhere. Having a guy like that in the back, it makes our job so much easier just to go hunt, be free, and be loose. Because it's like they throw the Stingley, they crazy. So having a guy back there like that, man, it's really a
So obviously this is a question about Derek Stingley.
blessing.
I apologize. Yeah, Stingley, I think the biggest thing is just health, right? We talked about him already when we were talking about DeMeco. That the fact that they're willing to have him travel with the other team's best receiver now, and it was very effective on Amari Cooper at the end of the year when they did that. The sky's the limit for what they can do schematically if they've got Stingley locking down the best receiver or just locking down one half of the field. A lot of the stuff that we saw late in the season and in the Colts and the Browns game in the playoffs, that it was a little bit more complex coverage wise than they'd shown in the beginning of the part of the year. So that's where I think they can pick up from and start off being more deceptive at the beginning of this year than they were last year. So that hopefully should be a big difference. Final question was, how are they handling the raised expectations?
The expectations in the Texans have always been the same. No matter the outside noise, no matter the media, any of that, like we have a standard that we have to play to. We have a mentality that we play to, and that's the only thing that we have to play to is everything that happens in this building. And I would just say complacency. There's no place for that here at all. What we did last year was last year. What we're going to do this year is what we're going to do this year, and we can't focus on the past. So right now, it's just keeping that same mentality, and that's the swarm mentality. When all that fails, what are we going to do? We're going to go out there and swarm, and so that's what type of team we're going to be heading into this new season.
Yeah, the swarm mentality, man. I bought that hook, line, and sinker. I don't usually like motivational acronyms because, again, just kind of like talk of culture. The acronym wears thin after a while. I feel like the swarm feels like. Swarm is one of those things that was like, I think DeMeco liked the word swarm first because what are you doing? You're swarming to the ball. And then he filled in the acronym afterwards. So like as an acronym goes, I don't really like it that much. Like there's like a special work ethic and relentless mindset. Like, all right. And one of those, you have to you add two words together. But just like the swarming mentality, they totally had that last year. I think they're going to have it again this year, except with better athletes. So yeah, that part of it, as long as they keep focusing on swarm, that's I'm pretty damn optimistic about the defense this year. CJ Stroud heads up the Texans offense. He's rookie of the year last year, as almost every single one of you knows. But now he enters his first full off season as a Houston Texan. And the first question we have on here was simply when he was asked about adding Stephon Diggs to the mix.
He adds a ton of value, to that room. There's a lot of wisdom that he carries that I think he'll spread to other guys. And, he's been really reaching out to really everybody, and I think that whole room in general is going to be great. I think we're all going to eat off each other. It's going to be very fun and very exciting, just to work with everybody in that room, and I'm very excited for it.
It's really cool that he's been reaching out to everybody. Again, this is not something that's it's not a prerequisite, and he doesn't have to. And some guys are more extroverted than others. But I think that, like as it always is, things are way more complex than they're painted. And I think with Stephon Diggs, just like it was for the first 2 years in Buffalo, there was nothing but gushing and glowing reports about him and his relationship with Josh Allen and how well they communicated and all of that. So I have no doubts that right now that's just how it is. And I think with the short-term contract, I would expect that's how it's going to remain. So far, so good. It would be a surprise if it wasn't at this point, no matter what anybody wants to try to tell you about Stephon Diggs. Next, he was asked about being able to work out with Tank Dell out at UCLA last week like they did, as well as Diggs and Mechie.
It was great. Yeah, he's like you said, man, he's gotten a lot better. Mentally, I think even for both of us, really all the rookies, coming in year two, everything's starting to slow down, and the wheels aren't turning so much up in your head. You're starting to play ball, and having being able to throw with them in LA was really big, and Mitch looks amazing as well, and some of the guys that came out as well. So it's been amazing to get some work in.
Yeah, what they had that streamer too. Is it Sketch? I've forgotten his name already. I swore I was gonna like try to learn more about him, but I can't. I can only reserve so much bandwidth for gaming streamers anymore. My God. Tank Dell looks good. We all know that. I think the fact that DeMeco and Tank were already on a level where they had like a little ESP thing going on, where Tank would CJ would start his throwing motion while Tank was making his third cut on a triple move downfield on a scramble drill, like all that kind of stuff that a lot of other defenders around the league have kind of been blown away by. That was with not even a full off season of working together, and with neither of them knowing exactly what the NFL was all about. So like that part of a healthy Tank Dell and both of these guys on into their second year, that part could be pretty damn cool. And I know that when Sean Pendergast interviewed CJ for a private charity event a couple weeks ago, he said that like CJ's eyes just lit up when Sean asked him something like, none of this is on tape or anything. Sean asked him something to the effect of, like, what's Tank going to be like, or how's he look, or how good could he be? And CJ just said, you have no idea. So that part I'm getting excited about. This could be pretty cool watching Tank Dell this year. Then he further expanded on John Mechie looking good.
Man, it went great though. Like Mech really like looks amazing. He looks really, really all the way back, and then Tank looks great, and so the Diggs and a couple other guys who came out.
So Mechie, as he says there, he looks good and he looks all the way back. I thought he had said one more thing about Mechie and what he had gone through. There's a good chance that this is the next one, but we'll see. Yeah, like as I've said all along with Mechie, I think you've got a double whammy of an ACL followed by cancer and cancer treatment that there's almost no possible way to put a timeline on when he should be fully back. And then you add to that we never really got to see what he was as a rookie, not to mention, I've always wondered this sometimes with some of the players, like with David Quesenberry, the year he got cancer, he'd been looking not so hot, obviously, as he was working out in the heat and the spring workouts. And like depending on when the cancer may have started to affect somebody, you always got to be careful about just, what you think you actually know of them athletically. So there might be parts to Mechie that between the ACL and the cancer, there might be parts of him athletically that we just really haven't seen yet. So that part's super interesting. Obviously, Mechie knowing the scheme is going to help him a lot this year too. And it'd be like, honestly, obviously, it's going to be an awesome story if he can make it out of cancer and be a productive NFL player. But selfishly, it'd be also awesome for us. Aside from the really nice human part of it, I don't know, maybe you got him in your legacy league or what have you. Don't tell him that, okay? Don't be like, hey, Mechie, hey, fantasy, everything about fantasy football. Don't do that. Arian would torture your ass for that. This is interesting. This is how CJ found out that the team had. CJ might have been the last person to know that Stephon Diggs was coming to the Texans.
Man, he has a ton of value, a huge impact. I think that he'll bring this season. I think last year was good to get his feet back in the water, coming off of an injury, then something so traumatic like being sick, how he was, and his mindset is just, he's ready to come back and ball. So
okay, sorry, they got distracted. So obviously, this one is about Mechie.
He came out. Man, he has a ton of value, a huge impact. I think that he'll bring this season. I think last year was good to get his feet back in the water, coming off of an injury, then something so traumatic like being sick, how he was, and his mindset is just, he's ready to come back and ball. So not only is he a great football player, but he's a great person, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else with anybody else other than those guys in that room.
Yeah, as far as Mechie goes, there's the whole part of him he's lived in 4 different countries by this point, moved to America from Canada just so he could play a better brand of football, like a very committed and devoted dude when it comes to football, but also has a pretty diverse background. I remember the story was that He said he got fast running from wild dogs in Ghana because where they lived, there were like wild dogs in the streets, and that there were times where it's like you might get caught out having to run away from one or something, which sounds like the kind of thing that it sounds like the setup to like a bad story or something, but it's actually like it's actually what he did as a kid. So like the kid's got a really interesting story before he ever went through the ordeal of cancer. This next one, I promise you, is CJ telling everybody how he learned about the trade for Stefon Diggs.
I found out I was actually asleep. I was asleep I was been in the West Coast. I've been back home in LA, so I was knocked out. And I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb. I get a lot of phone calls. And so I didn't really know. And I woke up and my boy Chase B texted me. And he's like, "How you feeling, bro?" And I think he like asking me, like, I was like, I'm good, fam. How are you? And so like, and then I had sent like 5 texts like that. And then I woke up for real. I was kind of like halfway texting in the bed. Woke up, brushed my teeth, washed my face, and then I seen the news and I seen it on like Instagram. I'm like, oh shoot, that's what they talking about. So I didn't even tell Chase B or anybody like that. That was what I was implying, which is really just checking. I thought he was checking up on me, but yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah, so that's again. At first, I'm like, I couldn't remember. Oh yeah. The news came at 10 a.m. Central, so he was just waking up around like 8 a.m. on the Pacific time, and then it took him 6 or 7 texts for him to figure out what was going on. Yeah, that is a tricky one. My first inclination might be that something was wrong. I'm surprised that nobody actually didn't. I wonder if anybody did. He probably was one of those things. This is what Mike Meltzer will do. He'll just text a random name to you, and you're like, I don't know if you're asking me a question. I don't know if this is in the news or something. So like to have a text conversation with Mike Meltzer, sometimes you have to go to Google before you reply to him. So if Meltzer had texted me about this, he would have just said Diggs, and it sounds like this is what CJ's buddies were doing to him. I can empathize with you, CJ. It's frustrating as all hell. By the way, as far as John Mechie in Ghana, he says there are a lot of wild stray dogs in Ghana. I would hate leaving the house because it would always involve sprinting to the car, sprinting away to avoid them as much as possible. Oh my God, that poor kid. Man, I grew up when I was a young kid. We had a rooster that was really ornery. His name was Blobby, and he terrorized me. It took my dad 3 attempts to kill him. And my dad knows how to kill a chicken too. But this thing was like the most ornery, scariest rooster ever to rooster a farm. And I'm still kind of scared of him. I'm still kind of scared of roosters. Wild dogs is not. If I had only been blessed with wild dogs chasing me, maybe I could have been faster. And these stumpy legs carry me now. His overall assessment of the offense and the expectations that are on it.
We have a lot of potential, a ton of guys who played a lot of meaningful ball, a lot of guys who can do different things with the ball, which is amazing. And with all those expectations, all the outside noise, like right now is the time to focus. Right now is the time to build the foundation and build the chemistry. And of course, like Bobby always talks about, we're doing the work for the end in mind. Hopefully raising up the whatever we can, doing whatever we should do. But, none of that stuff happens unless you put in the work. So right now, it's just building that foundation, getting with the guys, talking about certain routes, talking about things is just as important as running the route and running and blocking guys, and it starts up front, to be honest, So LT is the leader of that room, and he's been motivating those guys. And, I'm the leader of the whole offense. So, and really the team. So, even the things that DeMeco has been saying has been everything just to, build that foundation, the fundamentals, doing the right things, the little things the right way.
It's just really cool, like the way these guys, at least CJ and Will, are very mature when it comes to understanding, like, okay, don't put the cart in front of the horse. Something that Stefon Diggs tweeted out the other day. He said it fancier. He said, don't put the carriage in front of the horse. But like these guys are very much aware of the dangers and the pitfalls of thinking that you've arrived before you actually have. And I do think that, I do appreciate that, even though it's a cryptic tweet, kind of, when Stefon Diggs tweets something like that, I choose to believe that it's him also, understanding, like, man, there's a whole lot of hoopla right now which is awesome. And we on the outside should be getting excited about that. You should, if you're a Texans fan, you should be really excited about a lot of the stuff the Texans have done. But as players, like the worst thing in the world you can do is start believing that you've arrived when you've still just had, one playoff appearance and one nice wild card victory. But also probably the sting of that Ravens game is first and foremost in their minds a lot of times. If you're gonna lose in the playoffs, I was actually kind of glad that they ended up. If they had to lose, I was kind of glad that they lost the way they did. Not like so they would suffer or anything, but it's a really good reminder all off season long that, man, all right, like we might be close, but that last step is a big old step. Like it's a big leap. That's like when you're almost out of danger in the horror movie, but you've got to like jump up and somebody's got to pull you up off over a ledge or something. Terrifying is what it is. He was asked, Jason Bristol from KHOU asked him about his family and what it meant to him. I had to cut it off midway, long story. But this is him talking about his dog Oreo. Don't worry, I didn't cut off I didn't cut off any religious references. All right, don't cancel me, everybody. I didn't cut off him thanking God or anything like that.
My little dog Oreo has been kicking it with me last couple of days. He's a toy poodle. He's 19 years old. So he's an old dog, and he's been kicking it with me, and hopefully he'll have another 19 years. But yeah, man, family's everything. It's been amazing to spend more time with them. I told my mom, this is the most I've ever spent time with my family since really like high school. Going to college, being in Ohio, I never really had that much time, so it's been amazing.
I hope CJ understands the life expectancy of dogs. Now, because if that dog's 19 years old. He's been with him since CJ was like 3 or 4 years old. Ooh. Oh man, I feel bad for him now. The little Oreo, this cute little toy poodle. That's like toy poodles before toy poodles were even as mainstream as they are right now. On Andre Johnson's Hall of Fame induction,
I'm excited for Andre, man. Like I'm super honored, to get to know such a legend. See how much of a good person he is and how down to earth he has been with me. He's been in communication. He'll call me after games, he'll call me before games, see how I'm feeling. He's really around all the time, and it's just it makes you feel good to see a good person get what they deserve. And I think I got a lot better these past couple.
Sorry, Johnny Lambo caught me. That dog's got to be bumping into things on the reg. He's definitely got cataracts if he's 19 and a poodle. Oh, man, that's awesome. For a small dog like that, that's awesome. So as far as Andre Johnson, so my first time meeting CJ in person was the night after the draft. It was day 2 of the draft. We were doing the draft broadcast from NRG. This year it's going to be down on Discovery Green. But I went in with John Harris to go get some food at the cafeteria during a break. And I walk in and I was like, oh, that's CJ and Will Anderson and Andre Johnson just sitting and having a chat. That's probably a good way to introduce them to Houston. This is after CJ and Will had already done their press conference. Remember, they had a really good press conference where both of them were out there and they were just having a good time. But it was cool because they were talking to Andre was there. I think Travis was there too. And I can't remember who else. But obviously, Andre's been a huge part of the organization in comparison to what he had been. And then obviously there was a little rift there with he who shall not be named ever again. But Andre just commands so much respect. I think we were interviewing JJ Watt earlier this year, and he had mentioned that he still kind of gets nervous around Andre. I can't remember what JJ said. I think JJ said something to the effect of I don't. Does he like me? I don't know if he likes me. Andre has that effect on you because he only says what he needs to say. He's got that deep voice. He's just very stately. And there is a little part of you that gets a little insecure around him. Like you're talking to the principal of your high school or something. But even the principal of your high school is a super cool principal and everything, but you're still a little bit nervous around him. I think that's how the effect that Andre sometimes has on people. I'm at first. So let's see. Oh, okay, this is going to be a little duo I'm going to do here over the next few. First, this is CJ on his approach to the off season.
weeks working with my guys on LA. You know, now
Let me back this up just a little bit so you get the whole deal.
A good person, get what they deserve. And I think I got a lot better these past couple weeks working with my guys on LA. You know, now trying to get better with my team and then go on and take every little step. And I think last year I wasn't able to do that much. I was meeting every team, going through offense after offense, and meeting a new coordinator, meet with a new head coach next week, and then finally got here, and then everything just ramped up. So now it's like I'm coming to the same offense, and you know, I get to slow down and really get better at what we're trying to get done this next year. So, you know, I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, the off season when you can actually, you know, focus on your offense. And remember, it's not a new offense this year. Think back to Alex Smith. Alex Smith, his first 4 years in the league, had 4 different offensive coordinators. And it wasn't until he got hooked up with Jim Harbaugh that everything kind of took off and he was able to focus on just that offense. I think right now, if he had lost Slowick, that, you know, you'd probably still have Gerard Johnson, but that might have been a little bit more difficult. But this is the consistency that you would hope for. Everything worked out the way that you would really, really hope for. So he had a promising year, but he's got the same coaches working with him. He's got largely the same skill players, except he added Stephon Diggs with a better offensive line. There's a lot that they can focus on and work on and improve. They've built that foundation. It's hard to build a foundation when you got all those things going on that he was just talking about. So he starts off way ahead this year, and I think with the right attitude. He was asked about what he remembers from his top 30 visit last year.
I remember the dudes that I came in with. I came in with Tajay Spears, and I'm blanking on my other guy's name. He plays guard for the Buccaneers. Went to North Dakota State. Yep, Cody. So me and Cody and Tajay was here, and it was really early in the morning. They picked us up, and we were together really the whole day. And I remember Nick made me he didn't make me, but no, it was actually DT. DT asked me to explain those two guys' personalities. So basically he was asking was I paying attention to them? And I guess I did okay.
Yeah, okay. That one was interesting because it reminded me of what Colin Cowherd said. We played this this morning on the radio. I don't think I can play it on here because Fox gets iffy about copyright stuff. But okay, so the Texans asked him his assessment of the other two guys, and CJ assumes that they were wanting to see when he said DT, that's Dylan. Is it Thomas or Thompson? Thompson, not the poet. Dylan Thompson, the player programs guy. What he thought of them, and I think CJ thought that Dylan would be evaluating whether CJ cared about other people or not. But I wonder, Colin Cowherd told a story. Now, let me just play it here. It's short enough. They'll probably this is Colin Cowherd. I know. Just hold on a second. Just watch Colin here for a moment talk about something that happened a couple years ago.
Houston has turned around a shipwreck in a year and a half based on smart people making really smart moves. Do you know that they reached out to me? This is people that do their homework. So I did an interview with Notre Dame safety, Kyle Hamilton, at my house because he was on a podcast network. Okay. The Houston Texans saw it, literally reached out to me. And they're like, hey, do you got 5 minutes? What were your interpretations of him as a human being? So I wrote him an email on the strange this or that. But I thought to myself, that's somebody that now Baltimore went and got him. But the Texans literally reached out and they were like, you spent 35 minutes with him. What were your interpretations? They just wanted information from any source. And I was like, that's real homework.
Yeah. I blame Colin Cowherd for the Texans passing on Kyle Hamilton. They traded down. Kyle Hamilton got drafted along with Jordan Davis. First Jordan Davis to the Eagles, then Kyle Hamilton to the Ravens. Then the Texans took Kenyon Green. So I'll blame Colin Cowherd for that. But I'm also curious, was it Dylan that called Cowherd up to have that conversation? It is I like that they're doing that due diligence. I'd say also, I think at the time, I'm guessing Cowherd probably thought this rinky-dink organization. Can you believe they're trying to have me doing their scouting Yeah. He wasn't all that high on the Texans until very recently. CJ, just as they asked Will Anderson about Will's relationship with CJ, they asked CJ about his relationship with Will.
I mean, we're just pushing one another. We sit next to each other in team meetings, and we're constantly talking about like how we can get this team better. And honestly, like we talk about how we can get it closer. It's not all about just work. We're trying to build. DeMeco always talks about the closest teams are the best teams, and for us, we're trying to build a close team and just do it in a natural light, in a natural way.
Yeah. So again, like just as Will was talking about, more than just working hard and all that stuff, but just building a close team. It's tough. Sometimes, coaches will encourage players to hang out and everything, but like they're not going to be matchmakers. They can't force you to do it. It takes guys like that. And I think I've talked to you guys before about this. There are some teams in the NFL that do a really good job of creating a sense of camaraderie, like creating almost a collegiate environment. I know Baltimore forever was like that, and I think somebody told me recently that they still are. Like some of it comes from the veteran leadership and creating that tradition. The Bills back in the day were known as a team that was like that, and a lot of it just had to do with the fact that like Jim Kelly had a huge basement at his house. And it was basically like a bar, like it was a party room, but it was a huge house with a huge basement. And that's where they would have parties after every game. Everybody would go over to Jim Kelly's house. And it was like, and you might think that's normal, and it's not. It just isn't. Guys kind of go their own ways. They kind of separate into their own little factions. The young guys are going out, and not all the young guys are going out together. The older guys have their wives and families. One or two of them might have their second wife and family, like the spare family, whatever it might be. Or I guess I should say secret wife and family. But like it's not normal. I think that CJ and Will, like if they continue on this track, it pays dividends. If you can create an environment like that, it just kind of sustains itself and keeps itself rolling. So, one obstacle back in the day was partly just that Houston's just so damn big that it's hard for guys to get together geographically. Everybody's spread out. Now that everybody makes so damn much money, the minimum salary is $750,000 for a rookie, I feel like they should institute an inside the loop edict or something. Like you guys all have to live somewhere. You got to either live like right there and you got to live there in Westview or Bel Air or like Meyerland or something like that, all within like a certain radius of the stadium, because this is what I need. I need this team to, damn it, be incredible. I'm Seth Payne. Whatever. This has gone on way longer than I thought it would. I'll chop this up. Thanks for joining me. Please like, subscribe. Any suggestions on people that you want me to do a pre-draft video on? I know I saw a few earlier there. I'll try to get to those. It's just it's kind of labor intensive. Even though I enjoy it, I go in too deep on it. And thank you for the compliments on the haircut and the shave. I feel like I'm reborn. Awesome. Everybody have a great day. Thank you. Go Stros.